Elliot Voss's fingers brushed the edge of the ancient pocket watch, its metal casing worn smooth by a century of touch. As one of New York's top antique restorers, he'd handled countless relics, rare coins, faded oil paintings, even a 17th century violin, but this piece, found in a dusty attic of a Manhattan estate, pulled at him like no other. The engravings were intricate, a rose edged around a sword, and a name etched in tiny script Iris Hale. He'd never heard the name before, yet a sharp, unexplained ache settled in his chest, as if he'd been searching for something he couldn't name for far too long. It was nearly midnight, and the studio was quiet, lit only by a single desk lamp. Elliot leaned in to examine the watch's inner mechanism, his tools laid out neatly beside him. He'd spent 3 days cleaning it, carefully removing rust and re-atticing a broken spring. And now, as he gently wound it, the watch began to tick slow, steady, and impossible. It had been dormant for decades, yet it came to life as if it had been waiting for him. A soft glow emanated from the watch face, warm and golden. And before Elliot could react, a sharp dizziness overwhelmed him. The room spun, the lamp's light blurring into streaks of white, and the last thing he felt was the cold metal of the watch in his hand, and a voice soft, distant, and familiar whispering his name. When he opened his eyes, the scent of old wooden jasmine filled his nose. The desk lamp was gone, replaced by a chandelier with flickering candle bulbs, casting warm light over a room that was nothing like his studio. The walls were paneled in dark oak, lined with oil paintings of men in tailored suits and women in long, flowing gowns. A fireplace crackled in the corner, and a grandfather clock ticked loudly, its chime echoing through the room. Elliot sat up, his head throbbing, and looked down at his hands. Still his hands, calloused from years of restoring antiques, but clad in a suit he didn't own. A crisp white shirt, a woolen vest, and a tailored jacket, all in a style that felt decades out of place. "Who are you?" The voice was soft, yet sharp, cutting through the silence. Elliot looked up, and his breath caught in his throat. Standing in the doorway was a woman, her hair cascading in loose waves over her shoulders, clad in a cream-colored silk dress with lace cuffs. Her eyes were a deep, rich blue, like the ocean at dusk, and as she looked at him, there was a mix of confusion and something else recognition, as if she'd seen him before too. But what stopped him cold was the faint, glowing line that curved around her wrist, a silvery thread that he could see, clear as day, stretching toward him. He blinked, and it was gone, as if it had never been there. "I'm Elliot Voss," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm not sure how I got here." He glanced around the room again, his mind racing. The furniture, the clothing, the chandelier, this was no modern reenactment. This was the 1920s. He realized the time he'd studied countless times while restoring antiques, but never imagined he'd experience firsthand. The woman stepped forward, her movements graceful like a dancer. "This is Hale Manor," she said. "My family's estate. It's 1924. You're in Somerset, England." She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. "You're not from here. Your accent, it's American. And your suit, it's well made, but not quite right for the time." "Iris," Elliot said, the name slipping from his lips before he could stop himself. It was the name on the watch, the name that had haunted him for days. The woman's eyes widened, and she took a step back, as if he'd struck her. "How do you know my name?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We've never met. I'd remember you." Elliot held up the pocket watch, which he clutched tightly through the chaos of the "I found this," he said. "Your name is on it. I don't know why, but I feel like I've been looking for you for a long time." Iris Hale walked to him, her gaze fixed on the watch. She reached out, her fingers brushing the engravings, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. "This was my father's watch," she said. "He gave it to my mother before they married. It went missing 3 years ago after he died. I thought it was gone forever." She looked up at Elliot, her blue eyes glistening with tears. "And you have the same eyes as the man in my visions. The man I'm supposed to meet. The man who will change everything." Elliot frowned. "Visions? I can see faint lines," Iris said, her voice quiet. "Silvery threads that connect people, that show the path of their lives. I've seen you, Elliot. For years. A man from a different time, with hands that fix things, who comes to save my family. I didn't know when or how, but I knew you'd come. And when I looked at you, I saw the fate line that binds us. It's bright, brighter than any I've ever seen." Elliot didn't know what to say. He was a man of logic, a fact she restored antiques by understanding their mechanics, their history, their tangible existence. But here he was, in 1924, talking to a woman who could see fate, a woman whose name was etched on a watch that had somehow pulled him across time. And yet, none of it felt impossible. It felt like coming home. Over the next few days, Elliot settled into Hale Manor, thanks to Iris's kindness. She told him about her family, her mother, a fragile woman still grieving the loss of her husband, her brother, Thomas, a reckless young man who'd gotten involved with a dangerous group of investors, and the estate itself, which was on the brink of ruin. Her father had made a series of terrible investments before his death, and now, the family owed a fortune to a ruthless businessman, named Arthur Voss, no relation to Elliot, as far as they could tell, who planned to seize the manor if they couldn't pay their debts within a month. "My father's mistake was trusting the wrong people," Iris said, her voice heavy. "He thought he could make a quick fortune to save the manor, but he was tricked. And now, Thomas is making the same mistake. He's agreed to a deal with Arthur Voss that will ruin us for good." Elliot listened, his mind already racing. He was not a financier, but he knew history. He knew how the stock market crashed in 1929, how certain investments would rise and fall, how to spot a scam. And more than that, he had modern knowledge that could turn the tide for the Hale family. "Let me help," he said. "I can fix this. I know how to handle people like Arthur Voss. I know which investments will pay off, which ones are traps." Iris looked at him, hope flickering in her eyes. "You're sure? This is dangerous. Arthur Voss doesn't play by the rules." "I'm sure," Elliot said. "For you, for your family, and for whatever this is between us." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and when his fingers touched her skin, a jolt of electricity ran through him. Iris leaned into his touch, her eyes closing, and in that moment, Elliot knew. He wasn't just here to save her family. He was here to find her, to fulfill that had pulled him across time. The next morning, Elliot set to work. He first sat down with Thomas, who was skeptical of the American stranger his sister had taken in. But when Elliot laid out a detailed plan, selling off the family's worthless investments, investing in emerging industries like aviation and radio, and using the profits to pay off the debt, Thomas's skepticism faded. "How do you know this will work?" Thomas asked, his voice tight. "I've studied history," Elliot said, keeping his explanation vague. "I know what's coming. Trust me." Thomas took a leap of faith, and it paid off. Within 2 weeks, the family's finances were earning around. Elliot used his modern knowledge to negotiate better terms with their creditors, to spot the flaws in Arthur Voss's deal, and to guide the family towards stable investments. He even used his skills as an antique restorer to appraise the family's art collection, finding hidden gems that could be sold for a fortune if needed. But it wasn't just his financial acumen that impressed the Hale family, it was his kindness, his patience, his willingness to help. He fixed the manor's outdated plumbing with parts he improvised from scraps, using modern engineering principles to make it more efficient. He helped Iris's mother tend to the gardens, teaching her new techniques to keep the plants alive through the harsh winter. And every night, he and Iris would sit by the fireplace, talking for hours, about her life, his life, the future, the past. They fell in love slowly, gently, as if they'd been doing it for a lifetime. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," Iris said one night, her head resting on his shoulder. "Someone who understands me, who believes in me, someone who's willing to fight for my family. I've been looking for you," Elliot said, his voice soft. "I didn't know it, but I have. Every day, in every antique I restored, in every empty moment, I was looking for you. And now that I've found you, I'm never letting go." But their happiness was short-lived. Arthur Voss, enraged that his plan to seize Hale Manor had been foiled, decided to take matters into his own hands. He broke into the manor one night, intent on stealing the family's valuables and destroying their records. Elliot, who'd been working late in the study, heard the noise and went to investigate. He found Voss in the library, rummaging through a desk, and a fight broke out. Voss was bigger, stronger, but Elliot had modern self-defense training, something he'd learned after a break-in at his studio a few years ago. He dodged Voss's punches, landing a few of his own, and managed to pin him to the floor. But, as he held Voss down, he felt the pocket watch in his pocket grow warm again. The familiar dizziness washed over him, and he knew his time in 1924 was coming to an end. "Iris," he called out, his voice urgent. She ran into the room, her face pale, and when she saw him, she knew. She saw the glow of the watch, saw the way his body was starting to fade, and she fell to her knees beside him, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered. "Please, don't go. I just found you. I can't lose you again." "I have to," Elliot said, his voice breaking. "I don't know why, but this is where I belong for now. But I promise you, Iris, I will find you. I will come back. No matter how long it takes. No matter how far I have to travel, I will find you again." He pulled her close, kissing her deeply, as if he could pour all his love into that kiss, as if he could hold on to her forever. "I love you. More than time itself." The glow grew brighter, and Elliot's body began to fade, piece by piece. Iris clung to him, her fingers digging into his jacket, but he slipped through her hands like smoke. The last thing he saw was her face, tears streaming down her cheeks, and the last thing he heard was her voice, screaming his name. When Elliot opened his eyes, he was back in his studio, the desk lamp still on, the pocket watch in his hand. The clock on the wall read midnight. Only a few minutes had passed since he'd worn the watch. He was home, back in 2024, but his heart was still in 1924, with Iris. He picked up the watch, which was still ticking, and looked at the engraving. Iris Hale. He knew he had to find her, or at least find her descendants. He spent the next year researching the Hale family, poring over old records, visiting libraries and archives, following every lead. He learned that after he left, Iris had continued his work, using the knowledge he'd given her to keep the family and the manor safe. She'd never married, never had children. Shed waited for him, until the day she died, in 1998, at the age of 96. Elliot's heart broke. He'd been too late, only to miss her by decades. But he didn't give up. He kept researching, and one day, he found a letter written by Iris, addressed to him, dated 1997. Just a year before she died. It was hidden in the pocket watch, tucked inside the mechanism. A secret she kept for 73 years. "My dearest Elliot," the letter read, "I know you will come back. I can see it in our fate line. It never faded, not even for a day. I've waited for you, for as long as I could, and I will keep waiting, even in death. If you find this letter, know that I loved you then. I love you now, and I will love you forever. And if you ever find a way to come back to me, to the time when we were together, I will be there, waiting for you, in the library, by the fireplace, just like we used to be." Tears streamed down Elliot's face as he read the letter. He held the watch tightly, willing it to take him back, to give him another chance. He wound it again, the same way he had a year ago, and closed his eyes, whispering Iris's name. When he opened his eyes, the scent of jasmine and goldwood filled his nose. The chandelier flickered above him, and the fireplace crackled in the corner. He was back in Hale Manor, in 1924, and standing in front of him was Iris, her blue eyes wide with shock and joy. "Elliot," she said, her voice trembling. "You're back. You actually came back." "I told you I would," he said, his voice thick with tears. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if he'd never let her go. "I'm sorry I took so long. I'm sorry I missed you." "You're here now," she said, crying into his chest. "That's all that matters." This time, Elliot didn't leave. He stayed in 1924, with Iris, and together, they finished what they'd started. They solidified the family's finances, ensuring that Hale Manor would be safe for generations to come. They exposed Arthur Voss's scams, putting him behind bars, and they built a life together full of love, laughter, and the quiet joy of being with the person they were always meant to find. Elliot used his modern skills to improve the manor, to help the local community, to make the world around him a little better. And Iris used her gift to guide them, to show them the path that would lead to happiness and peace. They married in the spring of 1925, in the gardens of Hale Manor, surrounded by family and friends. The pocket watch, which had brought them together, was their wedding gift to each other, a symbol of their love that transcended time. Years later, as they sat by the fireplace, old and gray, Elliot held Iris's hand, and she smiled at him, her eyes still as bright as the day they'd met. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found that watch?" she asked. Elliot shook his head, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "No," he said, "because I was always going to find you. It was written in our fate. I searched for you across time, across years, and I found you. And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." Iris leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in silence, listening to the tick of the pocket watch, the crackle of the fire, the sound of a life well lived. They'd beaten time, beaten fate, beaten the odds. They'd found each other, saved each other, and loved each other for a lifetime and beyond. And in the end, that's all that matters. Love that transcends time, that defies all logic, that makes even the impossible possible. Because when you're meant to find someone, no distance, no time, no obstacle can keep you apart. You'll find them, no matter what, and once you do, you'll never let go.